Let's have a look at how to use the verbs suggest and recommend because they seem to pose some difficulty for Spanish speakers. You can, for example, suggest something. You can suggest an Italian restaurant, you can suggest a film, you can suggest a concert, or you can suggest somebody for a post, for example. Okay, so this would be suggest and a noun. The most typical example would be when you suggest doing something and the verb in the ing after it. For example, when you suggest buying her a book, or they suggested taking their car. And as I say, this is the most frequent situation when you suggest doing something, because you suggest it and then probably you're going to do it as well. So I suggested buying, I suggested going, they suggested taking, something like that. Sometimes, however, you may need to use a that clause, another subordinate clause after it, maybe because you're going to have a different subject. Maybe somebody suggests something and then it's a different subject here. So in that case, you have two options. The first one is when you use the verb suggest, then a subordinate clause with that, and then subject and the verb should, and then the infinitive of the verb. For example, when you say, I suggested that we should meet, and they agreed. Or for example, when she suggested, half jokingly, that they should sell the family car and all buy bags instead. So she suggested that they should sell. Okay? Or if you ask a question, you could say something like, are you suggesting that I should ignore her? Or finally, I suggested that she should see my doctor. And this is quite common. This sounds natural and okay. There is another option which sounds a bit strange to Spanish speakers because you have to somehow make a change to traditional grammatical rules. The second option would be to use instead I suggested that subject, and in here an infinitive, not a verb in the present or the past, but just the bare infinitive, the infinitive without to. Okay, this is what you have. And as I say, this sounds a bit strange because it's never used probably, but this is what happens in this situation, probably because it's a very old structure in the history of the English language anyway. So in this case, instead of saying that she sees, no, you say, I suggested that she see my doctor with the infinitive. Or they suggested that I try. You can't notice it here, but it's the infinitive. Or I suggest that we wait a day or two. Both options, either the infinitive or should, are correct and in use nowadays. You might see this, so if you know how to do it, that's fine. If you feel more confident using this one, it's okay. But these are the two options you have for suggest. The verb recommend follows very similar patterns. So for example, you could recommend something. Can you recommend a good restaurant? Can you recommend a good book? Can you recommend a TV show I could watch? Okay? Or you can recommend something to somebody. In that order. Okay, so for example, this is the laptop that we recommend to most customers. Or we recommend this laptop to most customers. That's one of the options. The second option, again, very similar to what you do with the verb suggest, you can recommend writing your feelings, or some doctors recommend putting a board under the mattress. So the verb recommend plus a verb in the ing. If you need to use a subordinate clause, again, the pattern is very similar to what you would use with the verb suggest. You could say, I recommend that you go on a diet, with an infinitive here. You could say, for many reasons, I would recommend that everyone involved, that would be the subject, everyone involved, proceed, and you can see it's an infinitive. It's not in the third person singular as it should be, because you have everyone. No, everyone proceed with caution. For example, we strongly recommend that all water systems be metered and monitored. So that's an infinitive, metered and monitored. Another example, I strongly recommend, that's very typical, I strongly recommend that everybody treat, again with an infinitive, not the third person singular, everybody treat themselves to a nice evening out once in a while. Okay, and you also have the option of using should. So current guidelines recommend that a safe cholesterol level should be below 5. That is also possible.